Hello and welcome to the Cyber Weekly. Um, Today we are proud to welcome Hugh Shepherd. Hugh Shepherd will tell us a little bit about himself and who he is in general, because this episode is purely about him and his skill sets, especially around working from home and then the idea of freelancing, which is something very popular nowadays and it has been so much popularized in the media. And many young people actually embrace it so much. So, yes, Hugh, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks, Dio. Before I get started, so thanks again for having me on to talk with you, and so I appreciate this opportunity. But again, I'm Hugh Shepherd. I'm originally from the United States, but I live overseas right now in Asia. My background is telecom and IT. I've worked in the industry for well over 25 years, various capacities. I started ages ago, for a lot of folks, like probably before you were born, a lot of people were born, was still pretty much what they call the POTS line, plain old telephone system, copper wire. So I've seen it all from, the early days of like the internet, the tech boom at the, in the early 2000s to like the convergence of everything from IT into video and and the growth of cybersecurity and now at the cusp at the age of AI. But yeah, I just have a pretty extensive career and have been living overseas now again in Asia for a while and doing the freelance thing for the last few years.
According to you, if you look back to your life, what are those things which, or something that stood out from you when you were young, which actually intrigued you into cybersecurity, or it came later on for you?
Well, as a kid, I don't really consider myself like a tech guy or a big gadget guy. However, I mean, and actually, I'm more of a history guy. I always enjoyed history and politics. However, as a kid, I enjoyed sci-fi and space movies, Star Wars and the first Battlestar Galactica and the old episodes of Star Trek. So I've always liked technology, even though I may not have been a computer guy. I was born in the pre-internet, pre-PC era. So, a lot of that stuff wasn't really thought of, having a set of encyclopedias was the internet in the house, like it's a set of books. But, I would say again, just that kind of love of sci-fi and space and exploration and technology or tech in general was the connection and the kind of the driving force that led me to a career in IT and telecom.
Okay. So if we are to dive in, why cybersecurity?
Well, I'll start, I was in the Army, in the U.S. Army for a while, and I worked in tactical communications. So, I did get some exposure to like, ComSec, communication security, tactical security. However, later on, after I left the military, working in the civilian side of tech in IT, I started to get more interested in first, just the name itself, the term cybersecurity to me was new, because and actually, when I was, when I first started, it was more commonly referred to as information assurance. So IA, or information security. This whole cybersecurity term or concept was new, and I thought it was like, exciting. I was like, let me learn more about this. So, of course, like a lot of people, who are in the cybersecurity or have an interest in it, it was more on the offensive side, think about, the hackers, the people who were, doing the, what we consider like the cool stuff or whatever, cybersecurity. But it was later on my job where I got exposed to like the not so glamorous side of the compliance stuff, and the system hardening of a system of a PC is where my first real hands-on exposure to IT, or sorry, to cybersecurity came into play.
Okay. Now, if you are to lean towards being a digital nomad lifestyle, how do you thrive as a freelancer, and where can one start from, especially in cybersecurity?
Well, I mean, I'll start from scratch, far as my experience as a freelancer and remote digital nomad type worker. It was more out of necessity because my wife had started working overseas in Nepal about 10 years ago, and so we were going to we spent a year apart, and I stayed stateside working, my traditional 9 to 5 office job as an ISO, as an information security officer. But it was hard being apart for a year, and we was like, okay, we can live on one salary overseas in Nepal. So I resigned my position and moved overseas. And so this is pre-COVID. So it was really, at least I found, or maybe it was like a mindset thing. I found it kind of challenging finding these remote opportunities. Maybe at the time my skill set didn't necessarily align with what they were looking for in the remote position. So it's been a lot of me changing my mindset as far as like how I approach work, how I look for, opportunities, and I become more entrepreneurial, more willing to get out there and network and talk to people, and be more vocal and explain, hey, this is what I do. These are the things I have to offer. Because before, again, I came, pretty much standard kind of career, working in the office, nothing, wasn't so much out there trying to, be a hustle and look for opportunities. It was more of me just like, okay, this is my job description. This is what I do. But yeah, I think for me, it just took kind of a change in mindset, and some upskilling as well. Getting out there and refreshing my skills and my knowledge and things that were more emerging tech or that were more hot. Far as like skills or needs of, like, for remote roles. So yeah. Hopefully I answered your question. I think I kind of bounced around approached it from several different angles, but I think I answered it.
You're not doing badly.
Thank you.
But how long did it take you? Because definitely people usually assume that, you know, um, it's easy to get into this lifestyle, but I'm sure there's always that learning curve, and then, you
Yeah,
know, getting those, too many calls here and there.
yeah,
It's like, even like the way we are looking for guests on the show, sometimes you have to talk to several people to get at least one person
yeah, yeah.
to come on the show. So
hmm
how long did it actually take you to actually get a breakthrough, and how was that whole process like?
Well, as far as like the first kind of paid opportunity, it took maybe, well, a couple years, 2 or 3 years, maybe less. However, when I say paid opportunity, it was like little pay type of opportunity. But I was proud of that because it was like, hey, this is money, or this is a contract I earned, on my own. It started through just doing volunteer work. That was the way. That was my foot in the door to one of my current contracts that I've had for a while. To where they had like a volunteer kind of drive to help out with some of the developing some content for their platform and everything. And I took my role seriously, and people saw the quality of my work. And eventually, they offered me like, hey, we'd like to bring you on as a contractor, basically doing the same thing you're doing now, or I've been doing, but as a paid employee or contractor. So, that took at least a couple years for me to figure it out, and I admit there were other things that this has been for me was not a very, I'll be honest. it's been a learn as I go type thing. I highly recommend that anyone who wants to pursue this type of lifestyle or this career path, that they plan it out and they think it through first. They have a strategy. Just don't jump in feet first like I did and just kind of like I'll figure it out as I go, which is fine. However, it's a real learning curve, and and if you're the sole breadwinner, or your financial situation is dependent on what the money, you don't have that opportunity to learn as you go, which I was fortunate enough, with my wife working full time, and we're living in a country that it wasn't, the cost of living wasn't high. I could figure it out, but definitely have a plan, while you're still employed in a traditional type of job. Maybe dabble in the freelance world, be it through different platforms, be it like, Fiverr, what's the other? I can't remember. Upwork. That's a good way to start dabbling as a freelancer, to start building that reputation and everything and that clientele. And then, go from there to like go full time as a freelancer or digital nomad.
Okay. That's interesting. Uh, that's actually one of the things which people actually don't usually see, that, it comes with a hidden cost to it. But if you had to chime into that first opportunity you got of actually working with, I think it's Cyber, right? Where
Yes.
you, so yeah, I've used the platform. It's really good, and seems you really did a very good job that they had to retain you for some time.
Yeah.
Uh, so tell us about that whole journey of the time you spent, because it's one of those platforms which is really good in terms of training people. What are those things that you stood out for you when you were there?
Well, I kind of touched on it just a few minutes ago. Well, this was, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, maybe 2016, 2017. We had this big kind of initiative where they brought in a lot of volunteers across the globe to work remotely in their creator community. People who volunteered, yeah, you were given the opportunity to help with develop content, help, you were given the opportunity to help write some of the materials out, you name it, QA content, be a teaching assistant. It was a really great program, and it went on for several years. It was all volunteers, and with volunteers across the globe. And so that's the platform, or that's the program, how I pretty much got a foot in the door, because I just fully immersed myself into the activities. At times I probably took on more, than I should have. However, I was able, I guess, to do a good quality work, especially when it came to QA, quality assurance and reviewing content, that my work was noticed. And that's when later on someone came to me and was like, from Cyber, was like, "Hey, we want to offer you a contract to do this work for us as an actual paid contracted employee." Uh, I still look out for similar programs, like volunteer, so I highly recommend, if there, especially a reputable organization or platform like Cybrary, or some of these other, programs, or initiatives, or, if they're looking for volunteers, I mean, being paid is great, and I do like, I do recommend everyone to get paid for their work. However, don't knock volunteering as well, because that quite often is an entry point into these organizations and these roles, where quite often aren't really publicized. It's because you're basically an insider, and you build that connection, and that reputation, that opportunities come your way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now if you're now going to uh, your profession, because one would argue that uh, obviously, basing on what you have said right now, people would be like, maybe. But one would argue still that, still basing on your experience, because you've worked for multiple organizations like
Yeah.
Alcatel, Verizon,
Yeah.
Eminence. Um, it was easy for you to transition to freelance?
Actually, no. And maybe because of my age, I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm a little older, I come from, I'm a Generation X guy, if that means anything. So, I was more of, working at an office type of thing. Even working from home was considered kind of new, in my career, in recent years. So, this transitioning to freelancing and remote work for me took kind of a mind shift, a change in perspective. But I think because of my role, the type of work I was doing, the type of organizations, and no knock on any of these organizations, but some of them are larger, very structured, not as nimble, at least maybe at that time. So it was a little more kind of hierarchical or structured. Nowadays, I think a lot of even the big organizations understand and see the value of being nimble, having more of a global workforce, and also, post COVID, I feel like a lot of companies have changed their perspective on hiring globally, or at least hiring people for remote roles. Having these different kind of expanding their talent pool. And that's the big thing, that like now it's such a competition for talent, especially technical talent that, people, organizations can't just limit themselves to one geographic region or whatever, they have to look globally because it's such a fast-paced world. Everything's evolving so quickly that, if someone's sharp, and they live on the other side of the planet, we thankfully, thanks to internet and connectivity, subsea cables, that person can still work for you, even though they may be, in a thousands of miles away and across several different time zones. Not easy, but I'm sorry. The remote first or the remote culture company, in a lot of these companies has been a big factor. Again, I think I answered several different questions, but hopefully I addressed your initial question.
Yes, you did. But on a normal day, we could start from your normal 9 to 5. How does it look like nowadays?
Well, my normal day is very, I'm gonna say not erratic, but it's not a standard day. And I try. If there's no other thing, nothing else going on, personally, I'd like to get up early. Like 6 a.m. Start working 7 a.m. and maybe work till about 4 or 5. Or a little longer. But I have small children, and then, because my client or hours or what, are longer at night because, my client, I'm interfacing with the client. So I'll break my day up. And that's the beauty of, I find with my role and my situation, because as long as I get the work done, no one's really monitoring, hey, are you in front of your laptop or whatever. So I think most remote first companies are like that, which is good. Yeah, every now and then you'll hear one like, well, you need to be overlap at least a minimum of 4 hours with the home headquarters office in wherever. Which, okay, I get it, and then I'm doing that myself, when split my day up, not out of requirement, but just out of, I feel like it's more effective. But would be my day, I try to keep it structured, but for the most part, I'll break it up. 4 hours here, 2 hours there, but I at least at a minimum put in the 8 hour day in some combination of of time. The main thing is getting the work done. As long as I'm getting the work done, I'm adding value to my project. No one really, unless there's like a meeting or whatever, make sure you attend meetings. Getting the work done, most folks are just happy and glad you're able to deliver.
Yes, that's interesting. Now, if someone wants to actually employ you as a freelancer, what are you looking at, and what are you offering as you in cybersecurity? What is that people would want to look out for in you specifically?
Well, I'm more on the compliance side and the what people refer to as GRC, the governance, risk and compliance. I'm not a pen tester. I'm not a I'm not going to set up your firewall. I'm not a SOC analyst. However, I can on the leadership side, at a like maybe ISO level, lead a program or put a program together. Um, uh, for my biggest client right now that I'm dealing with, I'm their advisor here in the field for digital infrastructure for the Indo-Pacific region. So I focus on cybersecurity, but I focus on other areas as well. So I need to also, even though I'm not necessarily required to be a hands-on tech guy anymore, I need to stay current and knowledgeable of what's emerging and what opportunities are out there and what threats are out there. So, my role or what I bring to the table is more of a more of a kind of a, advisor type of position, that's able to maybe develop a technical or a cybersecurity strategy, look for cybersecurity, even what to like kind of security control assessor, like, hey, we have to, you got to make sure, you're, addressing these concerns, this or that. So more of a risk advisor, a compliance advisor. That's what I bring to the table more so than maybe I'm not a pen tester. That's not my role.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I want to dive a little bit into the technical one, which is what is it that in that particular role that you're good at that you don't like to do?
What I'm good at that I don't like to do, you know, let's see. Well, I I've been doing uh, a little more like forensics and kind of believe it or not, help help desk type stuff. It always comes up, when someone, I introduce myself or hand out my card, they say, "Oh, cybersecurity. Well, we could use your help with the printer." I'm like, or we could use your help with the router, to connect, and so even though I mean, I'm okay at that stuff, but I don't always, because I don't do it that often, you know, uh, you know, it's not something that, I mean, I can do it. And I actually like doing it. I like being hands-on, and I like actually doing the foundational fundamental stuff of cybersecurity of IT, because it helps you stay current and stay knowledgeable. However, I don't always enjoy it, especially when, I think I fix whatever, troubleshooting something, and then I don't fix the problem. But, I've learned over my career, if you turn something off and turn it back on, that usually fixes most issues.
Best way, by the way. Just turn it back on,
Yeah.
and then things work.
Oh yeah, but you always hear
Yeah.
the term like, "Oh well, let's power cycle the device." Let's turn it off.
Yeah.
It sounds real technical, and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it works now." Like, yeah, I just power cycled it.
Actually, I have a guy who I work with who also has ways of making things which are not even very technical, too technical. Let's say he's moving files from one device to the other. It'll be like data migration. I'm like, really?
But yeah, I mean, it is data. It is moving. It's migrating. Like, true.
Uh,
Yeah,
okay. That's
but
very
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So, um, when you still now in terms of compliance, definitely handling clients is very different because sometimes they look at you as the police trying to, pin
Yeah,
them
yeah,
or try to show incompetence of some sorts.
yeah.
How do you usually handle such situations, and what's the best way you start?
Well, and I'll even expand it. Even as a consultant, quite often you're viewed as the bad guy or this, someone coming in here trying to bust us on something. Sorry, my phone is making it. But it comes down to things that aren't necessarily taught or technical. It's building that relationship. Having being professional, being personable, that goes a long way, doing and having like maybe some sort of if the opportunity presents itself, like a face-to-face meeting, where you get to interface, or interact with the person, talk to them, and you build that, so they see, they view you as a person, not as a bad guy. And also, and try to reinforce like, hey, I'm here to help. We're on the same team. I'm not here to try to, bust you or something. I just want to help you out. I'm here to help. So that usually goes a long way. It takes some time, but and I think as tech people, um, it's probably a little challenging because yeah, and I'm a tech guy, as even though I studied poli sci and history. I Deep down inside, I'm more of a tech guy. So I'd rather kind of just sit and do my work and not really interact with folks. But you need to be able to, you know how to navigate in amongst, a team, work with a team, work with your peers and your colleagues. And you manage your career, both at your peer level, your management level, and your subordinate level, because you still learn, you're always learning. You learn from people who are maybe junior to you or your same level or up. Again, I'm answering the question from multiple angles. Basically, the main thing I would say is, learning to be able to build a relationship with your client so that they know that you're not out to get them, that you're there to help, and you're on the same team.
Yeah, yes, I know you're answering from different angles, but I would still want to urge that we talk a little bit about now. Give us a scenario of maybe a potentially a scenario of actually a client who, things didn't go well, and how did you handle the situation in order to remediate and also find a proper resolution?
Well, I won't name names, but there was a situation where there was some installation work going on, some hardware, telecom hardware into the central office, which is basically now probably most often referred to as a data center. And so there were delays, and the perception of the client, because like, that in that time we would do the work overnight during safe hours so that if there were any issues or something like an outage wouldn't really impact, hopefully not a lot of people because it was in the middle of the night. So anyhow, so a lot of the work we were doing, well, all the work, majority of the work we were doing was at night. And then we were done, before the boss or for the daytime people came in, the client. So they always felt, like, okay, they knew we were behind, and then they don't see us in the morning. Oh, you guys aren't doing anything. And so to remedy that, again, it goes back to, I made sure to build a relationship with that leadership, that client leadership, and just talk to them, ask them like, hey, you know, uh, you know, uh, figure out where the issue was, and basically what I just explained, because we didn't think about it. We were like, hey, we're doing our work, these are our hours, but not realizing like, hey, you gotta make sure the main guy sees you, or especially if things aren't going exactly to schedule, this don't, not be present. I was not necessarily at a high leadership role at the time, but I was the face of our our organization on site at the client site, talking to the client, and then being in the the leadership role or supervisor role on site. Yeah, you may have been up. I may have been up all night. I'm tired. I want to go home. However, as the leader, I had to make sure I had to stay there a couple of hours more to talk to him, report, and make sure, even though it may not been in the normal reporting scope, I had to make sure he was happy, he was satisfied, and then things went well from there. And so again, it's kind of a simple solution, but it went a long way, and it actually helped us win more work with that client at that same site, because he saw that, hey, even when faced with this challenge or whatever, uh, these guys are still trying, and or they're, we did
Yeah,
deliver,
yeah.
and they're
Motive the
out,
initiative.
putting in the effort to make sure I'm happy, the client, making sure he's happy.
Yeah, yeah, that is actually key, especially gaining communication with them, and then they are able to actually, you know, get to know you more. So as we are wrapping up, is there anything we missed that you would want to talk to us about?
Well, I mean, I'll just share, some things, lessons learned from my past, or from my career as a younger guy or coming up. I quite often was always looking for the next move. At the current job I was on, I instead of immersing myself into the present in that moment, doing the best work I could possibly do, learning all I can, and just knocking it out the park. I always was trying to think, long range, or my next move, which is good. It's good to plan and have a plan, but also you can't. Or my mistake was not just making the most of the moment and enjoying the moment and learning all I can from the moment, instead of always thinking, about my next move. So I recommend to everyone, who's coming up, maybe it was just a me issue or me problem, but like maybe it was something I had to work on. If there's something that, if others feel, are maybe always, they're like, oh, I got to do this, or by year 3, I need to be here. Just slow down. Things always, I've learned things work out, especially if you're putting in the work and you're doing good work, you get recognized. Well, and you do, but also you got to be your best, your number one advocate as well. So I know that kind of is again attacking it from another angle, but be your number one advocate, and also do the best work and immerse yourself in your current, make the most of the moment. So that was a lot. Hopefully that was added value.
Yes, it does answer my question.
Oh, good.
But obviously, I've spent this time with you, but I'm assuming, yeah, the fact that you have been in the army, my foolish assumption. I usually like that thing because I got it from For Dummies. I don't know if you've read their books. They
Yeah.
usually they are a caution at the beginning. My foolish assumption. So my foolish assumption is that the fact that you have been in the army, um, there is a level of discipline that it comes with. Has that actually permeated into your life? And
Mm.
yes.
It has, prior to my time in the military, I definitely was not, you know, I could have worked harder at the young age.
You are looking for the best way of
Yeah,
of saying it.
yeah. I'll just be. I could have worked harder. I could have
Yeah.
tried harder. I could. This sounds crazy, but I could have been more willing to endure some hardship or face challenges. My time in the army helped me build that character to where I was willing to accept challenges and face them down and endure some hardship, endure some pain, in a sense. And the discipline of, like, it has to get done. It's just not going to magically get done. So if it takes me getting up at 5 in the morning and working till 10 at night or whatever. I know that's extreme, but I've develop that level of discipline. And I'll be honest, I'm human, so like, it's not consistent. There's some times where I do kind of like get a little, I need a break or whatever. That's okay. We're all human. Give yourself some grace, but shake it off and get back. At least how I look at it. I shake it off and get back into that discipline mode because now as a husband and a father, people are depending on me. So there's no time to be like, I'm taking a break, take a 10-minute nap and then get back to it, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, my time in the military definitely was beneficial, and the discipline has been, uh, uh, I've used it to my advantage, as I progressed in my career.
So I would be foolish enough not to ask about the advice you would give someone who is in the military, actually, who is planning to join cybersecurity, and what are those things that you find that will help them?
N- never stop learning. Always be curious, be willing to do the hard work and be willing to do the work that you may think is this mundane or like, basic or beneath you or whatever, because it's not. Take every task seriously. Continuously learn and push yourself. You got to push yourself. And far as me as a freelancer, me stepping out of my comfort zone and pushing myself has been the biggest sea change and the biggest benefit to me as a freelancer. And I think that serves anyone well. Be it military person, a new guy out of college to the industry, or even an older professional who maybe is just kind of like in a comfort zone. You can do more. Push yourself. Be willing to step out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess that is also part of the parting shots, unless you have something else reserved for the parting shots.
I think I keep looking at my list here. I think I touched on all my parting shots in that one answer. So
Yeah.
I'm
So,
done.
if someone wants to find you and get to know you, keep in touch with you, if they're seeking mentorship, I've seen you talk about Blacks in cybersecurity. Where can they find you?
LinkedIn, that's the best place to connect with me. So definitely, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we go from there. And I've been a part of BIC and a mentor in the BIC program, mentorship program since its inception. And I those guys, the leadership team and the BIC community, I have nothing but the great things to say about them. So check out
For
BIC.
those who don't know what BIC is, Blacks in Cybersecurity.
Sorry, Blacks in Cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and
Yeah.
and Blacks in Cybersecurity or BIC has a global presence. So I know we have chapters in Europe and Africa. I think in East Africa, several, and definitely Western Africa. So definitely check them out. And yeah, I think but to connect with me, the best way is on LinkedIn. And Dio, I think you have my LinkedIn profile, so feel free to share it with the community, with your viewers and listeners, and yeah, feel free to
Yes.
connect.
Yeah. I've definitely added it in the show notes, so you can check it out on the show notes. Other than that, thank you, Hugh Shepherd Jr. I don't
Yes.
know where the senior is, but Junior.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Dio. Thanks for the chance to talk to you, man. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.